What's up everybody, welcome back. So in this episode we're going to take a look at migrating the turret into our multiplayer game project and make sure that everything is working smoothly. So this is not going to be a really long episode probably, but I just wanted to make sure it's in here for completion's sake. So let's not waste more time with introductions and stuff like that, and let's get working. So over here I have the multiplayer game project, and I've taken the steps from video number 7 of the turret series to migrate the turret into this project. So really all I did was actually migrate the turret folder in here, the changes that we need to make in our default game INI, and also adding the stimuli source component to our character. We already had that set up for our previous AI, so that should be in this project already. So make sure the turret is migrated, that you have the default game INI edited with the lines that says the auto register pawns for all senses is true. Make sure that's set to false. And then add the stimuli source component to the character. So those are the only steps I already taken before I got to this point. And now the project specific things that we might want to take a look at. First of all, let's open our turret projectile and make sure that we set up the collisions. So we're going to go to the collision sphere for the projectile, and we want to make sure that we make a few small changes in here. So we have it set to custom over here already. If not, you can set it to custom for the presets, and then we want to make sure that we ignore all of our traces. So we're going to ignore the visibility, the camera, and also the bullet trace. And we also want to ignore pickup items. So we're simply going to set that to ignore as well. So this is the actual trigger for a pickup item. So we don't want the projectiles to collide with a trigger. So make sure we set up these to ignore, and that should make the collision for our projectile work. So at this point, if we hit play, and I already added the turret to the level, then it sort of works. So let me see what's happening. So we can walk in the turret range, he will actually recognize us as an enemy and start shooting, and I will actually take damage. So the hit indication is off, so that's something we need to take a look at. And we also have a few errors, and as you can see the turret keeps firing while I'm still dead, so that's something we need to take a look at as well. And as you can see there are a bunch of errors over here that we need to take a look at. So this is mainly because of the hit indication. So let's take a look at that one first. So for the get damage direction, and to fix that we need to go inside of our turret projectile, and we need to have an actual reference to our turret actor to determine where we need to place our hit indication on screen. So we need to add a new variable inside of our turret projectile, and that's going to be the owning turret. And we're going to turn this into a pawn variable. So simply select pawn, and then we want to select pawn over here. And then what we want to do is make sure that we hook that up. So if we go over here for the apply radial damage with fall off, we also need to get the instigator controller. So we can get the owning turret from here and then drag off and get the AI controller. Like so. And then we can hook this one up to our instigated by controller. So we have that variable actually populated and we can use that later on. So we need to make sure that we select our turret over here and then set it to instance editable and exposed on spawn. And with that set up, we can go inside of our actual turret. And over here, where we spawn the projectile inside of the turret fire event, so we can refresh the node that actually spawns the projectile, and now we have the owning turret input. So over here we simply want to drag off and plug in a reference to ourselves. So that way the projectile has a reference to the actual pawn. That should work. And now we also want to go inside of our hero base character to make a few small changes in there. So let's open our hero base character. So the turret is using the radial damage, or actually the projectile that we fire is using the radial damage, and our player also responds to radial damage. So we have an event in here that takes care of it. But we need to make sure that we fix the problem with our team ID. So the turret doesn't have a team ID. You could potentially make it if a player is able to put down turrets. You can make the turret have the same team ID as the player that placed it. But I didn't go that far, so I simply added the turret to the level, and it's an enemy of all players, so it doesn't have a team ID. So we need to make sure that we fix this. So what we can do, for example, is go back to a pure cast for this grenade parent. So let's right click, convert to an impure cast, and then we can hook it up over here. So if the cast succeeds, we can simply call it like we used to. And if the cast fails, we're gonna copy this node and paste it over here. And then hook it up to the cast failed pin. So we simply want to hook up the other pins as well. So the damage received, the attacker is simply the control pawn. And then for the team ID, we're just going to say -1. So it's an invalid team ID, and this will make sure that the turret can actually damage us in a team deathmatch game, for example. And then we can hook up the impact point and the impact normal again. So this should fix the player taking damage from the turret and also fix the issue with the hit markers, because we added the instigator controller to the radial damage event. And what we also want to do is go inside of our server process hit function. And this is the one that we actually need to take care of if the player wants to damage the turret. And for the turret, it's responding to point damage and radial damage. So we simply need to make sure that we apply point damage to the turret, for example. So if a player fires, the process hits function is called and it's checking what it's hitting. So if it's inside range, and then over here, we're checking if the actor that we hit implements the damage interface. And if it does, it's actually an AI. So like a minion that we added at the beginning of the series. So if this is true, this is not going to be true for the turret because it doesn't have the BPI damage. So what we can do over here, in the next check, we check if the BPI damage player is added to the hit actor. So this is for PvP. So this won't be true for a turret either. So if both of these branches return false, then we can simply say apply point damage to whatever actor that we hit. And if that actor actually implements the event point damage, then it will automatically respond to that. So what we can do for the false pin over here, that checks for the damage player, we're simply going to drag off and then do an apply point damage event. Like so. And over here we can simply hook up some values that we already have. So we should have a local variable in here for the damage result, and we can plug that one into the base damage. So the damaged actor simply comes from the hit result. So we can go back to the beginning over here and plug it into the hit actor from the break hit result. Then we have the hit info, so we can actually just grab that over here at the beginning as well. So that's the actual struct that we're breaking. So plug it into the hit result of the function. And then we have the event instigator. So that's actually the player controller of this character. So we can simply go to the variables over here and look for our shooter player controller and hook it up to the event instigator. So the damage causer is nothing in this case because we're using a line trace and not a projectile or a grenade, for example. So we can leave the damage causer empty, and we're not using the damage type class, so that's fine as well. The hit from direction, I'm not actually sure if it needs a vector or a location, but what I did in my project and seems to work is just grab the normal over here, and then I'm going to multiply it by -1, so around, and that should be the direction where we are hit from. So I'm going to say convert to integer, multiply with -1, and then plug it in over here, and that should work. So now we can also apply damage to the turret if we fire at the turret with a player character. So that should work as well. So at this point, if we go back in game, we shouldn't have any errors left, and we should also be able to kill the turret. So let's quickly check if everything is working over here. So let me first get killed by the turret. So the damage indicator is actually working this time, and it's displaying the correct damage direction. So that's a good thing. And I got killed. And if I close the project, there's no errors. So we fixed that part. And I should also be able to take down the turret. So let's go back in game and try that. So we have the damage impact FX, and we can blow it up as well. So those parts are working. Now the main thing left to do is make sure that the turret actually knows if the player is alive or not. So as you saw in the previous demonstration, the turret kept firing when the player was dead and lying on the ground. And we also want to make sure that if the turret selects a new target, it's not choosing a player that's already dead. And if we want to do that properly, we're going to set up a few interface functions so we don't have to actually cast to our character, and that's what we're going to do next. So first of all, we're going to set up two new interface functions. And the first one is going to be inside of the BPI damage player. So we already have that interface added to the player, so we're simply going to use this one. And we're going to add a function in here called isPlayerAlive. isPlayerAlive. And what we want to do is simply return a boolean that tells us if the player is alive. So we're going to add one output and say is alive. And that's a bool, so that's good. Okay. There we go. So with this added to the interface, we can go to our hero base character and then actually implement the function. So we're going to go to interfaces, double click the function over here. And all we actually want to do in here is simply hook up our isAlive boolean. So we should have that in here somewhere. isAlive. So grab it from the variables and simply hook it up. So that should be good to go. Compile and save. And we also want to go to our interface for the turret. So if we go to the GDR turret and then open the behavior folder, in here we have the BPI behavior turret. So we're going to add one function in here as well. And this function will tell the controller to remove a target from the target actors. So we're going to create a new function, and let's call this controller remove target actor. And we're going to give this one input, and that's the actor that we want to remove. So let's call this target actor, and that's going to be the type actor over here. So now we can compile and save the interface and go into the actual turret controller. And in here we want to implement the interface function. So go to interfaces and then double click the controller remove target actor. And all we want to do in here is call our remove target actor function and simply hook up the actor that we want to remove, like so. Okay, so with those interfaces set up, we want to go inside of the actual turret blueprint over here. And we need an actual reference to our AI controller. So let's make sure that we have that one first. So let's go to an empty spot and we're going to look for event possessed. And this will give us a controller. So we can simply promote this variable to an AI controller, and we don't actually need to cast it to anything. And we're simply going to store it as an actor. So that way we don't have a reference to our actual turret controller in here, and to make the interface call work, we simply need an actor reference. It doesn't care what type of actor class it is. So we're gonna promote this to a variable, and let's call this AI controller. But as you can see, by default it's a controller variable, so we can change it back into an actor. Change variable type, that's fine. So it will do some searching. So this is not the fastest way, but okay. So now we have the controller as an actor reference. So that's simply the lightest possible reference that we can have. And we can use this reference to make the calls with our interface. So now let's start inside of our start combat state event, for example. And what we want to do in here, every time that we have a 1 second wait, we're going to double check after the wait if our target is actually still alive. So what we want to do over here, we have the play exposed fx, and after that we have a 1 second wait, and we check if the current target is still valid. So we're going to add a few things over here after the is valid node. The first thing we want to do is grab our current target, and we're going to call our interface function isPlayerAlive. So the message function, and we want to hook it up to the isValid pin over here. So we can use the boolean that returns from it to determine if the player is alive or not. So if this is true, we can continue like we used to. And if this is false, we want to use our controller remove target actor from the interface to actually tell the controller to ditch this target because it's dead. So we can grab our AI controller over here and then call controller remove target. So we want to call the message function for the BPI behavior turret. We're going to hook this up to the false pin, and the target actor that we want to remove is our current target because that's a dead player. So this should be hooked up like so, and then we can simply copy this part, so the interface calls and the branch, and we can move over to the right side a little bit. So after we played the targeting beam fx for 1 second, we also need to check if our target is still alive. So we can just paste our previous nodes over here, grab the isValid pin, hook it up over here to the isPlayerAlive, and then if that's true, we're gonna start firing. If it's false, we're gonna remove the player from our target actors. And in that case, we also want to set our targeting beam fx back to false. So make sure you hook that one up over here as well. So we have 2 checks over here, and there is one final location where we want to add this check, and that's for the notify turret fire end. So let's go over here. Turret fire end event. So over here we also have the current target check if this is valid or not. So we're gonna add our is alive checks in here as well. Let's make a little bit of room. Like so. So we can simply paste the nodes in here again, grab the isValid pin, hook it up over here. So if the player is alive, we can continue, and otherwise we're gonna remove it from our target actors, and that should be good to go. Okay, so with this part set up, we need to do a few. Oh yeah, we need to hook these ones up to the actual target. So the interface call need to have an actor to target. So make sure you plug in the current target for both of those over here. There we go. So now we need to go into the controller for one last time. And in here we have the choose target actor event. So we can actually make sure that the turret does not select an actor that's already dead. So first we're going to check if all target actors is not empty. That's good, we can still do that. And then what we want to do is grab our target actors, and we're going to promote it to a local variable. So let's call this a local all targets. And then let's hook this one up to the true pin first. So I'm going to grab a for each loop, but this time I'm gonna reverse it because I wanna remove indexes from this array, and if we go from low to high, then we'll end up with an issue if we remove index 0, 1, or sorry, if we remove index 1 and then move on to index number 2, we'll actually skip an index because the indexes will take the empty spot. So if we remove stuff from an array, we want to make sure that we use a reversed for each loop, like so. And then we can safely remove actors from the array without worrying that we mess up our actual order in the array. So now we can simply drag off the array element, and that's a hero base character, so we can call our isPlayerAlive message function. Plug that in over here. And if this returns false, then we're gonna remove this actor from the array. So hook up a branch over here. If it's false, grab the local all targets array. And from here, we're gonna remove an index or an item, doesn't really matter. But in this case, let's grab the index, and we can simply hook it up to the array index over here. So this will remove all of the dead players from the target players array, and if this is completed, we might want to check if the array is not empty. So let's grab a branch, hook that up to the completed pin, check if the target array is not empty. So in this case, we need to hook up our local all targets over here. If it's false, so if it's actually empty, then we're gonna return nothing. So we can hook it up to the return node that doesn't have a selected actor, and over here, if it's true, we can select a random actor, but we also need to make sure that we replace this one with the local all targets array to make sure that we don't select a dead player after all. Okay, so with that stuff hooked up, this should work. And there is one small thing that you could optionally do depending on how your project is set up. If you go to the event graph to the on target perception updated. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, the turret will automatically register all actors that have the stimuli source component added to the components. So it will automatically grab all of those actors and mark them as a target. If for some reason you have the stimuli source component on an AI that you don't want to be a target, then you can drag off the actor over here and, for example, do a check to see if the actor that you are perceiving is implementing an interface. And in this case, I could check for my BPI damage player. So if the actor I'm perceiving has the damage player interface, I know it's a player and that's something I want to target. So if you need a more detailed selection process over here for the perception updated, that's a way to do it, for example. Okay, so compile and save, and now we should be good to go, and let's do a multiplayer test. So I'm launching a multiplayer game, and we can verify if everything is working. No, the client actually spawns inside of the turret range. So he's taking damage, that's good. Let's see. If the client fires, we can see impact effects, so that's working. And if the client dies, the turret doesn't keep firing, so that seems to be working as well. Now let's make sure that if the client respawns, oh, he's probably going to take fire again. Yep. So we might want to check if the server can die as well. So let's switch around. So you can see the effects on the client screen as well. And the server is dying and taking damage. So that part is working. Now let's make sure that the client can destroy the turret. And then I think we should be pretty good. So let's switch back to the client over here. So we can definitely see the impact effects, and we can see the turret blow up as well. So I think we are good to go if we don't get any errors, and we don't, so that's nice. So that's all I got for you guys today. We have the turret working in the multiplayer project and everything is good to go. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like, and I'll be back soon for more. Talk to you later, guys and girls. Bye bye.